And we are live. Welcome to the MMAngst podcast, episode 2. Joining me today is only one of our friends, Alejandro Castellanos. I can never pronounce his last name correctly.
It's fine. Yes, Alejandro is fine.
Alejandro is fine. You heard it here, folks. All right. Well, I am your host, Ben Cohn, a.k.a. the South African Khabib Nurmagomedov, as you all know. We're going to be discussing to me, the greatest knockout in UFC history.
It is the greatest knockout in UFC history.
It is, and people were arguing with me on this, or like making comments like, "Is it really though?" Yeah, it is. It was a reverse up elbow while moving backwards, ducking punches from the Korean Zombie, and he flatlined him in the last second. If you don't think that's the greatest knockout in UFC history, you're wrong, and you're entitled to your wrong opinion. But remember that you're wrong.
I agree with that. I agree.
That's straight up the KO of the decade, period, let alone UFC history. That's top 3 in MMA history.
Yes, because what is the criteria for gauging these things? Because after this one, look, what is going to be crazier than a move that shouldn't work, that is extremely low percentage, that requires some set of kills that nobody has trained for or against, and it happened at the exact right moment when he was supposed to lose the fight. So I don't know which. I mean, unless you knock somebody out in the first second with some insane thing, it's just not going to compare to this.
Like this is the craziest knockout since Anderson Silva versus Tony up elbow. Like, what? There's nothing even comparable. I can't even think of anything comparable. Like, people are going to be like, well, what about Anderson Silva front kicking? I'm like, yeah, it was amazing, but it does not compare because
it's not absurd.
I love how we were so excited to talk about this knockout at the intro. There was no intro. But realistically, we don't need an intro. We need to talk about this knockout because in the drama of the fight and the fact that he was losing that fight pretty clearly, Paul Felder and Brendan Fitzgerald were completely misjudging both in that fight. Despite that fact, what are we supposed? Nothing compares. The drama of the fight made that KO all the more impressive and insane and mind-boggling. I literally, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't know how late it was. It was close to 1 o'clock in the morning, and I ran around my apartment going, "Holy shit! What the?" Like it was unreal, and I was just screaming quietly.
Yes, especially because if you consider into this fight, people didn't make a lot of it because only got mentioned like 2 days ago. But basically, Yair came into this fight off the couch. The only things that he was doing was cardio and weightlifting, and he had because he had a debilitating injury that put him in bed for 5 weeks.
Which apparently showed up again in the fight, and then he broke his foot in the first round.
I don't know if it showed up again. I know he broke his foot, but basically this Yair Rodriguez is Yair Rodriguez off the couch pretty much.
Which is insane. His cardio is unreal.
And his chin was unreal.
Well, I don't think you can train chin. That's just something he has.
Yeah, it's just luck basically. He was born with a good chin.
Yeah.
But I mentioned it earlier when we were having discussions about this fight, and he had an Everest to climb. Like, it's not like a mountain that he has to climb, like in this sort of metaphorical sense that there's this incredibly difficult task. Like, it was literally insane. Dominic Cruz, when he fought TJ Dillashaw, he actually had a full camp. He had 10 weeks of training camp. You can make the argument that he wasn't training. You can make the argument that he was off doing whatever, not thinking about MMA, because I think that's what he said in the Joe Rogan podcast once. But Yair came with 2 weeks notice. That's 14 days. of not having trained with at high intensity in any degree. He just finished physical therapy. That's who Korean Zombie fought. Like, it's mind-boggling.
The crazy part is, though, I agree with you. The crazy part is, though, and this is going to be the basis of our discussion as well. I don't know if it would have been so different, that fight, had he had the full training.
I think it would have been in some aspects, because the way his distance was working at the beginning, you could tell that he wasn't quite there entirely.
But that was the round he won.
Yes, because that's when he was agreed, but that is when he was fresh. I mean, the first 2 rounds were dicey, like for Young. So one of those can go for Yair. I don't think he was winning a lot after that. And in fact, he lost most exchanges. Sorry?
I think 2 judges gave him the first round, and 1 judge gave him the second round, if I'm not mistaken. One of the judges had it as 2-2 going into the 5th, which I don't agree with.
No, that's a lot. But my point is that he had a few exchanges that you could tell his range, like with his hands, wasn't quite there. He has trained his feet so much, his legs more like, that he can use those to set up distance, and we will get into that later.
Yeah.
But you could tell that he had worked on things, like for like skills he developed for the Savit fight.
Yes.
That were in full display here, like in the way he was measuring
distance,
but you know, Young's reactions, in the way he was countering him, or trying, quote unquote, trying to counter him, because a lot of those shots just went whiffing past him. But there was something there, but we cannot say much because he just wasn't trained. Like, he literally came off the couch. He said he was eating a burger and drinking a beer, cañera or something.
He pulled Diaz, basically.
Yes, but he was injured. Like, he wasn't
vacationing in Cabo.
He was in no fighting shape. That's my point. And
Young may have had a full camp, but he was coming off of a major injury again.
Agreed, but the times in which he had his physical therapy were already finished by the time he started his full camp. Whereas Yair is like just some week removed from finishing physical therapy, and he just, I mean, his life, something happened there. He said to reporters, life happened, meaning like months, without doing much, really, as far as we can tell. Of course, he's been training and doing things, but he's been hopping around gyms. He's been moving all over the place. He's been let go from the company, rehired, and being through this weird roller coaster of emotions. And then, hey, go fight. Like, he got off the couch and went and fought. And I think we have to sort of mention that and give the man his props, because
no question.
What we're going, yes, because, you know, it's a noble thing in a way that he did, because to go out there and sort of represent his country, which is Mexico. Thank you, gracias, by the way. And it should be lauded for what it is, because not a lot of people would do that. Not a lot of people would take this risk, and not a lot of people would stay in there.
It's also possible. It's also possible he felt pressured to take the fight, considering that he was let go by the UFC. He was dealing with injuries. He was all this crap surrounding him, and to the point where he's like, if I say no, I might get let go for real.
Yeah. But I mean, we should, as I said, we should open with a disclaimer, right? That we appreciate what he did and admire what it took in.
Looks like we might have lost you there, Alejandro. You back? Are you back?
Yes. Did I cut off?
Yep.
Ah, shit.
Leave that in there. That is being left in there. I don't care.
No, no, what I was saying is that
We have
the
to admire
disclaimer that
100%.
yes, you have to admire that, because what we're going to do is that we're going to delve into a lot of the technical shortcomings that we can see. Of course, we're not professionals, but there's a lot of stuff in there that is very apparent and easily quantifiable in terms, yes, and it is easily quantifiable in terms of outcomes that we saw play out in this contest, and also what it can mean for his future. So
100%. And with that, let's dive right into it, because there
yeah.
are some things that need to be mentioned for Yair. We do know that I believe he's currently training at MMA.
Yes, he mentioned he was in California at King's, and he also mentioned he was training jiu-jitsu with Eddie Bravo.
Right. So the Bravo thing makes sense to me. With his body type and the way he likes to work his jiu-jitsu and ground game, it actually makes sense. The thing I do not like about the Eddie Bravo system / style is that he's not really working to get back up with that style necessarily. Eddie Bravo is all about that funky crap on the ground. I hate it with a burning passion. Just a note, if any of you 10th Planet guys come to Marcelo's go with me, I will hate you. I will hate all.
Maybe you should explain why you hate them, because it sounds like you're trashing the style, and that's not the
I'm
case.
not trashing the style so much. I do think it can be very effective. It actually has a lot more. I think it has a lot of benefits for MMA in particular, especially those funky guys who have that flexibility to work with it. For example, Tony Ferguson gives a lot of people trouble with that style because it's something that most fighters don't do, and it's hard to prepare for because in MMA there aren't that many 10th Planet guys, and the guys who are 10th Planet guys are also have traditional jiu-jitsu backgrounds as well, such as Vinny Magalhães. He is a 10th Planet black belt, but he's also one of the greatest black belts in MMA history. You know, like he's up there in the top 10 of all time in terms of accomplishments, probably. So that's something to note. Tony Ferguson is a purely 10th Planet guy. You know, Yair Rodriguez, it makes sense that he would be a 10th Planet guy. It fits his overall fighting mentality. So that works for me. Why I hate it is because I am a top pressure passer. And when somebody tries to put me in rubber guard and just hold me there or work for an omoplata for 4 minutes, I just hate you. It's annoying. Can we please roll? This is training, not Abu Dhabi. Stop working for points and start training. So moving past that, I love how I'm sounding like I really hate this. I don't.
It's bitterness. It's bitterness. It's not ill will. Yeah. It's bitterness.
I actually think it's very effective. I just hate being stuck in rubber guard for 5 minutes. So moving on, but training at King's MMA. Now, I want to specify why I think it's not necessarily a great idea. I do think it's a good idea for him to have some training there, because realistically, the type of styles he's going to struggle the most with, as we see, are high pressure styles, and we saw that he struggles against very fundamentally sound top game jiu-jitsu or / grapplers, like Frankie Edgar. So what is he going to learn at King's MMA? Well, he's going to fight pressure fighters, generally with a strong grappling background. See Benil Dariush, Rafael dos Anjos, Fabricio Verdum. There's some others as well, but I believe I don't know.
Kelvin Gastelum.
Kelvin Gastelum is a great example as well, although he's not really a top grappler necessarily. He doesn't really use it that much anymore, but he used to. Correct. So that's the type of guys he's really going to face there, and good for him to get that experience so that he can be ready for it in the cage. In terms of what he's trying to accomplish, though, in his game, we're not going to see Yair shooting for takedowns against the fence. We're not going to see Yair working a pressure boxing / kickboxing game.
No.
I don't think it makes sense for him to do his camps there full time. if he goes
Yeah.
there for 2-3 weeks just to get like, okay, I'm going to prepare for like this style, which I will probably struggle with. It's going to throw off my kicking game. I need to learn how to work my kicking game in this style. I'm fine with that. But to set up his camp there fully, we're professional here, by the way. You know, we're very professional here. I don't know if you can tell from our cell phones. I'm going to mute mine now that I remember. I just think he needs a different camp, and it's something that I think we see across the board. But let's pass this off to Alejandro. I want to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, the thing that could put, first of all, I agree with what you're saying. Just like a slight caveat that King's MMA does have one thing, which is sound basic boxing, like the most basic boxing techniques, which is jabbing, moving around, and having a sense of space with your arms. You know, for fist fighting, these people do it very well. The problem is, as you said, that these people are pressure fighters. And Yair is not a pressure fighter. He's more of a throw kind of person.
And I think we saw that. We did see him use a jab to good effect when he actually threw the jab. But, like, if you think about it, let's look at those three fighters: Beneil Dariush, RDA, and Calvin Gastelum, the one you mentioned, or Fabrizio Verdum as well. We can use. They all have a solid jab. I think.
Yes.
I think Beneil and RDA actually have the best among them.
Yes, but it's a stepping jab.
Correct, and it's a probing, and it's meant as a distance finder, but all of them.
But also to push you.
Correct.
To push you. Like, these are come forward fighters, and Yair is not that. He needs to set up his jab to, because that's what he's trying to do. Like, his style is pregnated on all these like flashy moves, if you will, but at the same time, what he's doing is that he's playing with misdirection so that he can catch you with something you don't see coming. The problem is that he has all of that done already, sort of that structure built, but he doesn't have something to misdirect you for long periods of time. So,
has Yair ever thrown a feint?
No, he hasn't.
Yeah, and that's something that I really want to see him work on, because imagine if he learned to incorporate feints into his style so that you really don't know what's coming.
Yeah, but
he already can hit you with things you don't see coming. Now throw a feint or two in there.
Yes, if you consider the fact that, like, look at his like one shot, like shot for shot, he has a good jab. He hit somebody with some good jabs and with good crosses, but he doesn't mesh these two together in any way that you can build a game off of that, or at least it doesn't appear that he does it. Again, caveat, he was coming off the couch. The problem with that is that it's a consistent pattern of events that we see in his fights, that he sets up the range and distance with his feet, and then opponents figure him out, and they start getting closer and closer and closer to him. And the most dramatic version of that was last night.
Yeah, well, I mean, was it more dramatic than Frankie Edgar murder stomping him?
Yeah, I would argue that it was, in terms of that we're talking stand-up fighting, because the failures against Frankie are that he's not a wrestler, that is not his base, but also he couldn't establish distance using his hands, using his arms. Like, Yair has long arms. He doesn't have a particularly devastating punch that we have seen, but he has long, wiry arms, and he has wiry strength. So at the very least, something that can keep somebody at bay, we cannot say that he has those tools, but he doesn't have the technical knowledge so far to work a consistent game. Like, we know he can throw good jabs. We know that he can use those as counters. We know that he can throw good crosses as counters, but these things exist separately. They don't exist on their own. And I know I'm fixating a little bit too much on the 1-2, but at the end of the day, Yair did a lot of work with his legs to put up this wall in front of Zombie, and it came down when Zombie started using the 1-2, like the most basic boxing technique, and that's what it started giving him success. So yeah, I mean, that's something he has to work on. Definitely.
I mean, yeah, and it's something that if you think about it, let's just to briefly go a little bit, not even off topic, it's relevant. Think about Rory versus Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald. The first 2.5 rounds were straight up them trading 1-2s and a front.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Like, and that was not only a technical masterpiece, but it was simply through the positioning and the feints and each one, working to find different ways to land their jab cross. And it was just marvelous to see that. So for us to watch something like KZ, and that was a war to end all wars, essentially. So if we now see KZ and Yair, and we look at that, and the most basic thing, because there was a lot of crazy shit thrown, but the most basic combination, 1-2, just was, one was winning the fight for KZ. Blitzing one.
Yes, basically. And the most interesting part of that you mentioned is that the positioning aspect, Yair understands this. He understands this. He knows that he may throw shots, but he doesn't do that. He doesn't throw them. He knows where to step in and when to step out, but there is nothing behind that. He seems to be relying on the possibility of him catching you with something crazy in order to deter you from moving forward. But as we see, if you are willing to grit your teeth and just wait in and see what happens, chances are you're going to catch him. Even though he has cat-like reflex, he's extremely athletic, like insanely athletic. And as we now know, he can take a hell of a punch or a hell of a lot of punches. You're still going to catch him. Like he's gambling, right? He's gambling.
Yeah,
and
he seems to be where John Jones was before his improvements. He reminds me a lot of John Jones.
You know what Jones here reminds me of? And bear with me. He reminds me of Roy Jones Jr. in boxing, in that he has this sort of physical specimen that knows positioning very well, knows when to do something, when not to do something, but he has none of the technical ability. Like he's nowhere, not none, but he's nowhere close. But that kind of athleticism that he brought to a table, that did you see? Well, I don't know if you've seen the fight with James Toney.
Yeah, I did. Awesome
you can see that there comes a point somewhere in the 3rd or 4th round that Jones has nothing else for Toney in terms of tactics. So what Jones does is he goes to the same bag over and over and over again, but he's so fucking explosive and he's so athletic and he knows where to stand relative to his opponent, that it just keeps working. Even though Toney knows what's coming, the sheer athleticism that Jones brings to the table, not only does it keep him there, but it gives him a comfortable win. And Yair is at a point where his considerable athleticism is what kept him in the fight, but he doesn't have the technical wherewithal, so to speak, to make more of that as he should, right? But he doesn't have it yet. So, and it is concerning in the sense that he's accruing a lot of damage, right?
Yeah, he's definitely accruing a lot of damage. I do want to note that Yair Rodriguez is exactly the opposite of me, in that he understands positioning very well, while I don't understand Mike positioning very well. The only difference is that I'm actively working to try and fix it, while he is not actively working.
You're speaking in terms of grappling, right?
Nope, I'm thinking in terms of Mike positioning on this pod.
Yes, because we have this joke where there is this messaging going on, and Ben keeps cutting off, like his sound keeps dropping because his position relative to the microphone oscillates between really great and not quite great. So we keep writing positioning to remind him of it.
For sure. And I do want to lead this into more of the overall discussion of we were discussing this last night, Alejandro and I. We were discussing the idea that fans seem to have that fighters are rational actors and they're always thinking in their best interest. And reality is that they're not, and we can see that in a lot of fighters. We're going to do other as he just essentially positioning. Two other fighters, Mike Perry and Louise Pena, as examples. Louise Pena is now training at AKA. He's training at AKA, and I don't get it.
He seems like Rockhold without the ability to either strike properly from a distance or shoot from out, or clinch you and take you down from out. And he seems limited.
He's lacking. So what makes those AKA guys so good is for Kane and Cormier, obviously, and Khabib, it's their wrestling. They're able to work with their wrestling. For a guy like Rockhold, aside from being a ridiculously strong and athletic fighter, he also has probably top 3 jiu-jitsu games in MMA, period.
Yes.
So taking him down really isn't exactly going to do much for you necessarily. Chris Weidman couldn't do crap to him on the ground. And say what you want about Chris Weidman, but his top game is absurdly good.
Oh, he's good. Chris Weidman is good.
Yeah, and Weidman could really do nothing. So Rockhold has that threat going on. He's huge for his division as well and should move up, which we'll get into in the second segment. But you have something like that going on. Pena doesn't have that. He's now 5-1. He is not fast for his division. He's not especially strong or athletic at either. Really, what he has is his height and reach. And
yes, he has a fantastic frame for fighting.
Yeah, phenomenal frame. And we'll get into this, but he should move up because he'll still have an excellent frame for welterweight. He'll be a huge welterweight. Neil Magny
Absolutely.
is 6'3". Neil Magny is 6'3" himself. And Magny, I think, is the tallest weight on the roster. So granted, Magny has a ridiculous reach, like 80 inches or something like that. But Pena's probably not lacking there either. It's just one of those things that you can't. Luis, he has a violent streak. It's obviously violent Bob Ross and all that stuff, but his violence is his thing. But when you can't, he has a 78-inch reach as well, by the way, Luis Pena. So he'd have a very long reach for welterweight as well. Now, choosing to fight at AKA, he's not a pressure fighter, which is something that most fighters there are, except for Luke Rockhold, who was a direct response to the pressure fighting training.
And Josh Thompson.
Yeah, well, I don't know. He's an anomaly.
But he's one of the first.
He's one of the first, but he's also an anomaly, I feel like. He doesn't really have a style. Like, he's a rangy kickbox, not rangy, but he's an out, I guess he's, kind of an out fighter who also has an opportunistic wrestling game with a very good top game. So he's kind of a weird mix of the different styles we see coming out of AKA.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So who also got injured every time. So that was like the AKA part of it. That was very, 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 very.
Yeah, he set the trend, you can say.
Yes. He didn't buck that trend. So so you have a guy like Pena who doesn't have the grappling chops / base of a rock.
And we're not saying that he's not good. Is that comparatively speaking, with Olympic level wrestlers,
correct,
he is behind the curve a little bit.
Correct. And while I do think, similar to Yair training at King's somewhat, it could be good for him, because I was talking with my, my friend Schwan Humes about this, and he was talking about how Pena fights like a guy who was used to being the biggest and best kickboxer in the room, and a guy used to using his height and reach. And obviously, he's not going to be able to do that at AKA. He's going to get, fucked up. Like, he's going to get fucked up. And that's a good thing. It's good for him to get a little bit fucked up here and there. But there's only so much that he's going to be able to learn there, I think, from a technical standpoint, which is what he needs. He needs to work on his technical striking a lot. It's still very janky in the cage. And Mike Trezano, I like that fight from him. It was very, very methodical. He broke him down. I really enjoyed watching it. He slipped and parried a lot of those strikes, landed his own, kept his cool, kept it very pace, not crazy, but not slow. Very enjoyable to watch. A little hairy in some of those grappling situations.
Yes.
I didn't like that he didn't disengage, but overall, phenomenal performance. And while I'm still excited for Louise Pena, I mean, how can you not be? It's Violent Bob Ross. I do think that him training at AKA is not the right move. And fighters aren't really rational actors, as you said, but I'd like you to experiment.
What I mean by fighters not necessarily being rational actors. Can you hear me?
Yes. Not being rational actors, why we see them make choices that aren't necessarily in their best interest for training and, career-wise.
Okay. Well, I can get a little bit into that. Well, by saying that fighters are not necessarily rational actors, we mean in terms of what for ourselves as people that follow the sport and that are looking from the outside, look like befuddling choices, but they can be justified when you look at it on their own context. Like, for example, we're to bring things back to Yair Rodriguez and not necessarily be a rational actor. You have a fighter that has a particular fighting style, but he is starting to get into this level of paying a lot for these choices that he's making. For example, we made a little comparison yesterday with Justin Gaethje. When he fought Poirier, Gaethje took 142 shots to the head against Dustin. Against Michael Johnson, 146. Against Eddie Alvarez, 113. That's a bunch of shots for each fight.
Against Michael Johnson, I think it was 46. He didn't take shots. He took a lot of body shots.
Okay. I looked at it wrong. Okay. But comparatively speaking, Yair Rodriguez took 111 shots to the head. So he's getting there already. He's 26, I think, years old. And so rationally, you would say, well, where can I go that will help me shore up these problems? Ideally speaking, I was talking with Ben, and I said he should go back to Mexico and work with somebody that teaches him proper boxing. I flew up some ideas, and he said not necessarily. He can go with Jason Perillo, and he will fix his stand-up, but he hasn't done it. Now, why hasn't he done it? Well, and the argument that I made was that fighters make choices based on what is more comfortable to them in the moment. Because, for example, you see with Yair that I think he's still with Mark Valle. His training, his head coach, I think. He went back with Israel Martinez Izzy Martinez, the guy that handles John Jones's wrestling. And he went back with Don Cerrone. I mean, all of these are people that he knows, and fighters are going to keep oscillating between people that they know. For example, we also mentioned a fighter that I'm very fond of, such as Irene Aldana or Alexa Grasso, that insist on staying in Mexico, and they're finding their ways around the needs that they have. For example, be it wrestling or jiu-jitsu, they're getting around these issues that they have, and they're working on them. But from the outside, we say, well, just go to the United States. But they're not going to do it. No, fighters aren't necessarily rational actors for people looking from the outside. We have this case with Pena, who doesn't really have the frame or the background. well, the frame he has, but he doesn't have the background to be training at AKA. Like the training that he's getting there is going to be a lot of sprawl training and wrestling training, but not necessarily how to mesh that with the stand-up that he needs. So yeah, I mean, these people are making these choices that are informed in a way, but they're not necessarily done in the overall context of their sport. It's mostly just based on what they have available to them. And that I was also telling Ben that at some point, knowing what we're dealing with, it feels kind of asinine to make demands of them that they should fix this or that in this particular way. But at the end of the day, one has to concede that there are fighters that do this, you know, that try to reinvent themselves and get out of their comfort zone. So, yep.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, and it's one of those things that we do need to stress. Louise Pena is someone I personally am so excited about. I think Alejandro is as well. There is a lot like there as an up and comer. He's still very young. He's
fun.
Yeah, he's so much fun. When I saw he was fighting, I got so excited, and I'm gonna be excited for his next fight too. You know, granted, all it made me do was now be excited to watch Trezano as well. So now I'm just excited for two people. It's great. You know, it's two more fighters I can really enjoy. It's
yes.
This is more of an overall theme that we see with fighters and something we notice. And like you just ended off with, we should not judge fighters the same way we would judge from our point of view. Like, of course, this makes sense. You know, it's not the same for them, and that's why they're fighters and we're not. You know what I mean?
Because we're wimps.
Yeah, that. I mean,
well, maybe not you.
I do jujitsu though.
No, I don't do anything.
I'm just joking. No, it's like, you know, there's a difference, and when you're talking about it from the point of view of they're looking at their career, their point as a fighter themselves, and we're looking at it from a point of view of like, no, this doesn't make any sense. So that is honestly where I would like MMA management to come in and be better, which unfortunately won't happen until the UFC starts treating their employees as employees legally, and there's a union and the managers
or an association or something of the sort.
Something. Right now, the managers are working in their best interest and not the fighters necessarily. Or entirely. And we can also talk about this. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment when you brought up the idea of fighters not necessarily making the best informed choices from their point of view when it comes to comparing it with how somebody from the outside sees things, and compared it with people that have done the right thing. Like, for example, people that have done the right thing and have gone their own way, which may be the trend in MMA, are Donald Cerrone with the BMF ranch, Tony Ferguson, El Cucuy, who has built his own facility, and in Big Bear, I think, and he has his own people that he has put together. There's TJ Dillashaw that has put together a good camp around him that has also drawn high-level fighters such as Mickey Gall and what's his name?
I think Curtis Blades is there.
Also Curtis Blades.
Yeah. EFT, it's Elevation Fight Team.
Yes, and you can sort of see this trend of fighters behaving a little bit more like boxers now, that that at the highest level they build their own camps. So it's going to be interesting to see whether this idea of people making these choices and how far they take them.
Well, I think that we can actually kind of slide in Mike Perry over there, because he's someone who needs a manager that actually knows what's going on, so they can build a camp around Perry, because Mike Perry should not be building a camp around himself. That would be bad. So I do think that that's something that would be good. And Mike Perry, in my opinion, is at the moment he's training at Jackson Wink. I think he's I think he's untrainable at that particular camp. system.
I don't know. I mean, I disagree. I think that Mike Perry has. I'm going to make a reference here. AKA's head trainer, I don't remember his name right now.
Javier Mendez.
Javier Mendez, yes, Javier Mendez was being interviewed about why Chris Weidman seems to sort of peter out as the fight goes long. Yes. And a lot of people have made the argument that he cannot adapt, this or that. Fair enough. He has adapted, but the argument that he made was one related to mental strength. And the way that I read it wasn't necessarily him saying that Chris Weidman wasn't strong. It's that he was not constant, like in the way that you focus your attention on something, right? Like the way that he was explaining things was that you need to have a kind of strength in order to stay the course, so to speak. It's not necessarily related to how much you want to win or how strong your will to not give up is present in your fight. Like it's more like how much can you retain attention during fights. And it seems like Mike Perry has very low, like diminished attention span compared to his peers, in that when he's doing something and it is working, great. If not, he's gonna do things. And chances are that the things that he does are going to be unorthodox. Like, for example, trying to... Yes, I'm trying. I'm trying to be diplomatic here, but yes,
he would be very upset at you for being diplomatic.
Yeah, probably. It's just he got upset with somebody for when they asked him about his friend Violent Bob Ross, and he got offended. Like he thought people were making like a gay joke or something, and he was mad. Did you see that?
No, that's amazing.
It's funny. Like you have to see it. Like, but that sort of thing. Like sometimes Mike Perry doesn't get things, and he will in turn do things that are not good for him.
Like taking down Donald Cerrone.
Why would he do that?
Because he's Mike Perry.
But that is exceptionally bizarre, considering that there is this. Yes, it is, because we are assuming that this man is we're making the assumption that this is an unassuming man that is not self-conscious whatsoever, which is not the case, because there is a whole video of him telling a story about being in the BMF ranch training with Donald Cerrone and struggling with his grappling. And he's saying, fighting is different than training. He's not gonna get me with his grappling because I'm gonna keep it standing up. So he's self-aware at least, but when he gets into the cage, he does things.
Clearly,
you don't know which way he's going to go, which it's all the more befuddling because he was winning that fight. He was winning that fight. Like,
yeah.
I don't understand. Like he was each and every exchange they were having, he was winning. Clearly, he can take a better shot. Clearly, the grappling exchanges, at least against the cage and in the middle of the octagon, he was winning too. And then suddenly he just decided, you know what, I'm gonna get cute. And then, you know what, I don't even think he thought about it. He just made a choice. Like, let's see what happens.
I don't think Mike Perry is a thinker in the cage. I think we can comfortably say that.
Isn't he? I mean, how does he fight though? Because I remember him starching Ellenberger with a properly timed elbow. He's
entirely a fighter who works on field. And people forget that Ellenberger was beating the shit out of him.
Yes. But he fought Santiago Poncinibio to a maybe some judge could have given him the fight.
No.
No.
That
on damage, not on damage.
No, because Pons was landing insane shots too and hurt him badly.
Yeah, you have a point. You have a point.
And the thing is that the more technical, quote unquote, Perry's gotten, with his stand-up, the worse he seems to have gotten, because he's not just throwing. I forgot. I think it was on Heavy Hands that they said that, and it's kind of true. Like, the more raw he was, the more he actually threw and landed, because he has a natural knack for fighting, you know. And if there's one thing that maybe that Jackson Wink is good at, it's bringing out that natural knack. But obviously, they haven't had that effect on Perry yet, because he shot a takedown on Cerrone. So
this should be good for him. Losing this fight maybe is good for him, because he got paid. He didn't get hurt in any way, shape, or form. Well, gosh, so I'm sorry. He actually his arm broke, so I'm wrong.
Yeah, he broke his arm. He didn't.
Yeah, yeah. But at least he didn't get his head rattled. I mean, Jesus Christ! Like, I'm trying to.
He wasn't going to be the guy to do that anyway.
I know, but then why grapple with him? Why shoot for a takedown?
It's Mike goddamn Perry, and goddamn Perry, man. And with Mike goddamn Perry, we're going to move on to our second segment. Granted, this is more of a lead-in from Louise Pena, so we're just going to pretend that we switched those two segments around. Pena, like we said earlier, he cuts clearly a shitload of weight. He's 6'3". The dude looks like he needs a burger or two. And
yeah, you can feel him struggling.
Yeah, and while we have seen guys like that succeed at lower weight classes, it's something that, really he's going to struggle with. He's not especially fast. He doesn't have the skill to make up for his lack of athletic ability, and he's not especially athletic. It's not like John Jones, where he was like, he might not be the fastest guy, but he's clearly more athletic than you, and a genius fighter. So, and with an amazing wrestling background. So, Pena has none of that. He's just a really tall dude, with a penchant for violence. So
he has a penchant for violence, but he also knows how to string things together to produce that violence. He has good instincts, I would say.
Yeah,
he has capable. Maybe I'm being overtly generous, but he has capable striking, which in law,
but it's not functional enough to really get him places at a higher level.
Well, no, they're not. No, it's not, because these people are smaller, they're quicker, they can take his shots because he's depleted, and he struggled with it. But his frame allows him to do a lot of things that most fighters do not get to do. He can reach you from afar. He can touch you with jabs.
But we just saw him fight a guy who, with basic fundamental head movement and parries and blocks, was able to avoid virtually everything he threw.
Indeed. Yes,
Yeah, and we're going to keep seeing that at lightweight, because he's not... Lightweight is the deepest division in MMA. There's no question. It really is. And he's going to keep encountering guys like that. Like, if he's struggling with Mike Trezano, what is he going to do at the upper echelon? Even if he does, keep moving his way up, because he is violent, and they're going to push him.
Yes,
have that issue.
He's depleting himself. He has, in my opinion, of course, looking from the outside, but he has no business in that division, because it's really doing nothing for him.
Correct.
Think about it. His frame allows him to compete at a division with people that are not as technical, they're going to hit harder, but he's also going to be able to take a harder shot.
Correct.
By virtue of not being quite as depleted.
I agree. I think he's one of those fighters like James Vick who would very much benefit from moving up in weight. We've seen, how many times have we seen fighters move up in weight and either, become a much better ranked fighter like Dustin Poirier,
or just a better version of themselves.
Correct. They're just better versions. Cowboy is another example who extended his career by moving up, and now he
wants to go back down,
which is insane, because Cowboy is not a small man. He's up there in age, he had the issue with his stomach. I know he had surgery to remove, or I think he had an accident or something that he had to have surgery. He had to have a car. He used to take a diet. He got caught using a diuretic to help make weight. And it's just something we need to address here, because it's 25 years since the founding of the UFC, and yet we still see guys who are literally killing themselves to make weight in a division. They're not they're not going to be able to perform as well as they could if they just moved up 10, 15 pounds.
Yes, it's just bad choices.
Again, it comes back to rational actors.
Yes, but for example, Macy Barber. People were making a big deal out of Macy Barber, and they should, because she's talented, she's aggressive, and she comes across well on the microphone, which should help open doors for her.
Yep.
And I think Paul Felder remarked that it is very unusual to see somebody in the strawweight division do what she did, like to attack with that kind of ferocity and get that kind of a finish. But then again, that fight did not happen in the strawweight division, because Macy Barber failed to make weight for the second time in her career.
And I think she fought Mel or something like that. She's only fought like how many?
Yeah, she fought like 6-0. I think she fought Mallory Morgan once, and she failed to make weight.
Yep, 6-0.
But not like. Yeah, but she didn't fail to make weight like by a small amount. She weighed like 126 pounds or 23 pounds, I think. Like some insane stat like that. Let me check. Mallory Martin, she weighed 123.4 pounds in her,
so her
second.
7.5 pounds. If it's a title, we're talking about 8.5.
Yes, she is 20 years old.
Yeah, it's not going to get.
She hasn't even started filling out yet, and and comparatively speaking, her height is listed as 5'5". As she's 5'5", 165 centimeters. You know who is 5'5"? Valentina Shevchenko is 5'5". Okay, Macy Barber's reach 65 inches, 165 centimeters. You know Valentina Shevchenko's reach is 166 centimeters. It's listed here as 65.5 feet. I don't know how, but it's like a centimeter. Like, this girl is the size of Valentina Shevchenko. What the hell is she doing in the strawweight division? Like, so we have to assume
she won't be there for long, honestly.
No, she won't be. Like, she's 20 years old. Why is she doing this to herself? Like, her body, like, she said that. Do you know that I read somewhere that even at 20 years old, your brain hasn't fully developed?
Yeah, I think it's up until 25.
Yeah. So she's cutting a ton of weight. She took hard shots. She can take a punch, okay? But she was actually eating shots this fight. She's taking hard shots. She's not spectacularly fast. And she's failing to make weight. Like, compare her to she wouldn't be the tallest fighter, but she's thick.
Think about it like this: Tatiana Suarez is the same height as Macy Barber and has less reach, 64 inches, and she's someone we think of as massive for the division.
She's noodly. Her arms are noodly.
Yeah.
Like, Tatiana Suarez is a good candidate for making 125. Macy Barber is larger. She actually weighted at above 130 pounds once.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I mean, for her, it makes sense. It makes sense because were the amateurs. She weighted at about 135, more or less, I think. So, she's getting her feet wet, whatever. But it's fucking difficult. Like, this is not going to get any easier. And then try to factor in, as Sijara Eubanks would say, she's a female, right?
Yeah.
So you have to factor in whether she's on her period, whether she's feeling bloated, whether she gets a UTI, or whether she has a cold and stops sweating. Like, you don't know what's going to happen here. Like, there's a lot more moving parts when it comes to women and cutting weight. And sometimes they can do it. I mean, Roxanne Modafferi just said she was in her period when she fought Sijara Eubanks. She made weight.
Well, she's tiny. It's a
Yeah,
lot.
that's the thing.
She's not a huge.
Yes, Macy Barber is
strawweight.
And Macy Barber, I don't know if she's taller, but she's certainly thicker.
Oh yeah,
and she's the
built.
Yeah, and she has never made strawweight in the UFC, so
that's true. I think it's also worth noting that I think the only strawweight right now who's ranked who's taller than Macy is Joanna, and she kills herself to make weight.
Well, she literally almost died to make weight.
Yeah, and she's nowhere near as thick as Macy is. So, like I don't know what we could expect, and I think it's important to know that. And we also saw Raquel Pennington, someone who never really seemed to struggle to make weight at 135, missed weight. Although I think that's a little bit more due to her. I think she's in the same position Miesha Tate was when she fought Raquel.
Well, to an extent. But the thing about Raquel Pennington is that she's been through a lot. I mean, this is a fighter that was technically she was comparatively behind most of her opponents, but she was always willing to wade in and test her chin. She was willing to grab you, and she was willing to work from there, kind of like an ineffective Randy Couture at her worst.
Well, I don't agree with that particular part. I do think that she actually was more technically proficient than a lot of her peers. I think athletically she was so behind that she had to use her toughness as a proxy for athleticism. But her skill sets, I think, were actually better than she had better pocket boxing than a good 95% of women's bantamweights.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I judge pocket boxing in terms of more like boxing in terms of what Sora Kaufman was doing years ago. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, but yeah, I can see that point. But she never looked exceptionally technical to me. It looked like
she's
somebody
so slow that she.
Well, that's kind of the thing.
Going badly. Like if you look at her list of opponents. Her first loss was someone named Corey Adams. I don't know who that is. But Kat Zingano, Leslie Smith, Jessica Andrade, and Holly Holm were her first five, or 4 of her 5 losses in the beginning of her career. Mm-hmm. That's not something to sneeze at.
Yeah, and also the
first fight with Jessica Andrade was a split decision that I'm pretty sure that Raquel should have won.
Yeah, and the Holly Holm fight, it was way closer.
Another split that probably could have gone to Raquel against a much more superior athlete and officially more superior boxer. But she was outboxing Holly, which is not really as difficult. Yeah,
I don't know what to say about that. No, you're right. You're correct. I walk it back. She's technical. Maybe I'm just going off the fact that in her recent fights, she hasn't looked very, very technical, which builds up to the idea that maybe she's worn, worn as worn gets.
Like I said, I think she's in exactly the same spot as Miesha Tate. When your primary mode of winning fights, your toughness. She's more technical than most of the division, granted, but she, her lack of athleticism meant she had to rely on her toughness. When you get so thoroughly ruined, to the point where someone like Raquel Pennington says, "I don't want to fight anymore," I think that's it. I think that's the end of it. I don't think she'll ever get to the point she was before the Amanda Nunes fight. Ever. I think she's done. I think the same thing happened with Miesha Tate. The second that I called Miesha Tate getting destroyed in the first round personally. And I'm very proud of that still. But I think we saw the same thing with her in the Raquel Pennington fight. She just
I think
she didn't want it.
The thing is that it's exhaustion, mental and physical. If Raquel Pennington really wants to keep fighting, maybe, of course, we're not privy to their business, but maybe she should take a long time off, 18 months, and figure things out. Because what she had that gave her an edge over her opposition, is just not there anymore, or as far, or it's taking a rest, or I don't know, but she has also taken massive damage. Like that accent she had, like that's not minor thing to come back from, and then compounded by the beating that Nunes gave her. I mean, she shouldn't be there. I don't think she should have been competing, especially against somebody like the Randomy.
Yeah, that was bad matchmaking. I think that was, which is weird because you think they'd want to punish the Randomy, but Raquel.
No, they gave her a softball. Like
they gave her a real softball.
Yes, in hindsight, right? They gave her a softball. And it's unfortunate because I kind of like Pennington in that moment when she wanted to quit and she was not allowed. Like, it's one of the most memorable moments in mixed martial arts. Like, I've been watching for a bit now. That's one of stands out as one of the most memorable moments, which should also compounds to the overall, concept that we had of fighters not being rational actors and being at places that do not necessarily have their best interest in mind. Because I remember I was shaken by that. Like, I think I maybe wrote her a Twitter message or something, like, and basically, like, it reminded me of something that, you go through life and you get your lumps or whatever, but there are people. I remember I wrote her this. It's going to sound very lame, but it's true. I think that there's people that do not know how to love other people. It's not that they don't like you. It's not that they don't want the best for you. It's that they do not know how to love other people. And when they send her back out this way, when she's completely and utterly broken, just so that she can do the work of reinstating herself mentally, through sacrificing her physicality, it's ridiculous. It's insanity. And then they are justifying it. And fighters, they will die if you ask them to, which is insane. Like, they will go, quote unquote, go out on their shield. That's what it means. You risk death in there. And
someone is gonna die in the UFC because of
which also builds back up into this idea of Yair Rodriguez and pulling that insane finish when he did. Because as
anything can happen.
Yes, anything can happen. And Ben mentioned it when we were having a short discussion yesterday of how that should give the anything can happen crowd like a boost, like a shot in the arm. Like, yes, MMA, it's a sport for crazy people, which it is. And it's fun to say this.
But let's be honest, it is.
Yes. But since anything can happen, we're willing to have anything happen, And sometimes it involves sending your fighter to get crushed after she's already admitted that she wants none of this.
Which absolutely ties back into the weight cutting thing, because how many coaches are going to tell their fighter, you are killing yourself to make weight and you need to stop. In fact, it's the opposite. How many coaches push their fighters to continue to make weight, where they're literally dying in the sauna or in the gym or wherever they're trying to cut the weight in the bathtub, and they're like, no, put him back in.
They have tried. They're slowly walking back from this. I think it's a trend. Like, for example, building up into coaches and teams, like acting the way normal human beings don't act, which, mind you, caveat, we're normal human beings, we're sensitive normal human beings. So fighters are not, like, they are a cut above. They don't think like we think. So with that in mind, consider like what I'm going to say next, in that you have fighters that are being pushed to do things. Like, for example, I'm just going to lay like this information that is going to sound a lot like I'm making excuses, though I'm not, for one of my favorite fighters, which is Alexa Grasso.
What? And I didn't know you were a fan of Alexa.
What? How can it be?
What?
No, but when she fought Randa Marcos, that fight shouldn't have taken place.
Go on.
Like, she missed weight. Like, she tested at, she weighted at 119 pounds. The night before, the week going into it, she wasn't her period. She had a cold first. Then she started feeling ill. Then she stopped sweating. Then they found out she was going to go into experience renal failure, basically. So they had to pull her out of there. Then they knew that she had a sorry, that she had a urinary tract infection. And what these people did was, okay, we're gonna cancel the fight. And she was like, no, I want to fight. Okay, there's a bunch of antibiotics. Go fight at altitude. After the Joanna debacle, because she shouldn't have fought either, they have become a little more mindful of this. But you know, their corners and their handlers, which I know love these people, are still sending them back out there. So there is no external party that is verifying any of these things. When Irene Aldana was telling Ben fought Lucy Pudilova, she actually busted her hand and busted her eye. She was fighting blind in that fight, like half blind, I'm sorry. When Grasso fought Heather Jo Clark, she was being trained by the now late Roger Follis. She actually had a detached retina in the first round. She told him, I cannot see. And he told her, no, 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 don't say that out loud. You know, in the corner. You can go back and watch the tape. He tells her to keep it to herself so that she can go back there. And then she says, see, it's the best thing that happened to me, whatever, right? Raquel Pennington, again, she says she doesn't want to go out anymore, and she gets sent back out. And you know, these people keep making all these choices. Now, in the case of Grasso, in the case of Clark, in the case of all these people, or Aldana, like, that's kind of part and parcel with being fighters. But at some point, this is going to result in a death. And at some point, this whole weight cutting thing, compounded with anything can happen, is going to lead to something really fucked up happening. And it should give people pause, you know? It should make people at least think about this sort of events when they're criticizing them. Like, it's kind of weird, like, to like a sport so much. And you know, the fight that Rodriguez and Jung gave us is one for the ages. But we should keep these things in mind, I think.
100%. And honestly, with that, I think we covered pretty much everything that we wanted to cover. This has been the MMAngst podcast, episode 2. But Alejandro, anything that you want to say before we go?
No, just thank you for your attention, and you know, be nicer to fighters if you can. You know,
I agree
don't
with
talk
100%.
don't talk shit to them in social media.
Yeah, don't be an asshole.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's really. I mean, that really applies in general. But don't be an asshole. But
yeah,
you know, the fighters aren't operating on the same wavelength
as most
we
people.
are. You know, that's
So,
why we're not in the cage getting punched in the face for a living.
yep, I would say that they are entitled to a little bit more of empathy in some certain exchange, in certain cases, right?
Yeah, don't be a just bleed, bro.
Yeah, and with that downer ending, we'll leave you till next week.
Well, we are the MMA Angst podcast. We have to leave them on a downer every single time.
Yeah,
I have been your host, Ben Cohn. Alejandro joined me today. Signing off, the South African Khabib Nurmagomedov.
yeah.
Have
Play
a
us
great
out.
day and enjoy your week.
Thank you.
Okay.